Hello. Thank you for joining my discussion today. I'm going to have Norma come on as soon as I invite her on. Go. Hey, Norma. Just sent you there we go. Hey, Norma.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good, good. Glad we could make it work.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I got held up at work.
It happens.
Okay,
Um,
so thank you for
but
joining
yeah, how
me
are you?
on this series that I'm doing to help just get our voices out there and just help promote people of color.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's been a few years now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I definitely haven't seen you since Point Arena, and that was a long time ago that you left and I left as well. So yeah, we can give a little introduction about yourself. So we grew up together in Point Arena. So yeah, give a little introduction about yourself, where you went to school and stuff like that, about your family and stuff like that.
Well, yeah. So I'm Norma Orozco. I grew up in Manchester, California. So yeah, grew up next to Juan over and went to Manchester Elementary, then Point Arena High School. So I think I was a couple years ahead of you.
Yeah,
A year ahead of you, something like that. Yeah.
two
I
years.
graduated, yeah, I graduated in 2010 from Point Arena, and then when I graduated from Point Arena, I went to UC Santa Barbara, which is where I got my undergraduate degree in global studies. And then from there, I moved to DC to work in the Senate as a legislative intern with the Judiciary Committee under Senator Feinstein. And so I was there for a minute and then stayed in DC for a few years before I moved back to California, to the Bay Area, Oakland, which is where I'm at right now, and then did a little stint living in Mexico with the grad school program that I did a few years ago through USF, so the University of San Francisco. And now I'm still here in Oakland in the Bay Area. So that's a very quick bio of where I've been, which has been quite a few different places. But my family is still lives in the Mendonoma area, which I guess is like another way to say it. But they live in Gualala now, so they moved
Okay,
down there. But my parents are still there. I have a younger sister that's Pointer in high school right now, and my older brother is there. My younger brother Mickey moved out, so he's in Washington now. But yeah, so I visit the area frequently. My family's still there, and they have been in the area for decades now. They moved there right before my mom had me, so about 29, maybe 30 years ago now.
oh wow.
So they've been over there for a long time,
Yeah,
and they,
a part of the community for a really long time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know I like dropped a lot on you there.
No, no, yeah, I'm surprised. I honestly did not know you went to DC and lived in DC and worked. That's really cool. That's really awesome.
Yeah,
And
I've done
that's
a
that's
few
what I
things.
want to see more of, you know what I mean? People like us in positions like that, doing things like that, because I think it's very important to start the change in like changing things in our, our systemic racist, you know, um, platform, the way we do things. So I think it's very important, and that kind of goes into my next question of your thoughts on people of color getting more involved in politics, being educators, being doctors, and such things like that.
Yeah, I think it's super important. I think it's like necessary for folks to be involved, but also to know like these spaces, they may not have been like created for us, but like we need to be in them. And so I think especially coming from an area like Point Arena, coming from such a small community, like there's so many things that I just didn't know. It was really easy to be apathetic. It was really easy to believe or think that like what was happening in the world or what was happening outside of like our little town didn't affect me or like didn't matter because you're so isolated that it's so easy to just like not see, like, you know, to not see like racist institutions, or to not see at like systemic issues, right? Like everything feels more personal and individual. And I think like for me leaving, I always knew I was going to leave. I think I was like a little bit more politicized than a lot of people in the area because of my parents. But it wasn't until I left and I like went to my first college course and like was in a university setting that I really started to see like systemic racism and like the prison, the school to prison pipeline, and like different things that like I understood naturally because of just like experiences, even growing up there, that I was like, oh, wow, microaggressions. Oh, wow, racism. Like racism
Yeah,
was a thing that did exist in Point Arena. And I was like, this isn't racism. Like there's no
yeah,
racism here. We're all friends and
exactly.
there's no segregation here. And it was like, oh no, all of those things are very real. Um and it was just like a thing where I was really naive and really oblivious to the different things. And I wouldn't say I was fully naive or oblivious to everything, because I think there's things that I had felt and I had seen and I kind of like understood, but I didn't have a language for until I left and like learned things. And I think it's like, you know, like it's our experience, it's our lived experience. It is like our realities that need to be the things that are shaping policy, that need to be the things that are shaping the world around us, that need to be like, you know, it's important, because all of those things affect so many different aspects of our lives. They affect who has access to food, who has access to shelter, who has access to school. It affects the way in which the education system runs. I mean, even in a small town like Point Arena or Manchester, like there were different tracks in the school. There were different ways in which students were kind of taught, or the different opportunities that students were given, based off of like a variety of racial and class things that just, you know, may have seemed invisible, and now that I've left are like very clear.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to kind of ask, like, what was a culture shock like for you when you left Point Arena?
It was something that I was like very ready for. I
Uh-huh.
feel like I always had seen myself as like wanting to be in the world, wanting to be a part of like a bigger picture.
Yeah.
I always, I always wanted to leave. I knew that was the thing, and I knew college was my way to leave. I knew that was my ticket. I think I'd been told that since I was like very young. So I had that going for me, that I had people that were like encouraging me to go to
Yeah,
college and to do these things and
absolutely.
telling me that I was meant to do those things, right? So it was always like in my mind, it was always a thought. I think like to this day, there's a lot of things that I think are normal that are not normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
um, that like was a culture shock when I left. And I'm gonna be real with you, a lot of it come like, for example, a lot of the culture around like drinking and drugs, that I thought was normal. Um, the way in which like teachers conducted themselves with students, that I thought was normal,
Uh,
that I left. And I think specifically around like drinking and driving, or, you know, like parents that were aware of
mhm.
things that young people were doing that, you know, I didn't think was a big deal. And then I went and like had these friends in these other settings, and it was like, oh, this isn't normal.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
isn't normal. This isn't okay. That wasn't okay. And
Yeah.
it like, yeah.
Like, I don't know, like it's pretty like parents drink with their teenagers in that area, you know, and it's like a thing. Like older people drink with teenagers in that area, and that's like really just like a weird thing. And like you said, like going out and like not drinking like a whole alcohol bottle of alcohol like before a party or like something, like people just don't do that. Like that's not
Yeah.
normal, you know. It's not like for me, it's like definitely an alcoholic tendencies I picked up from growing up in Point Arena, you know, because that's just the normal. It's just, oh, it's normal. He's just like blacked out drunk 3 days out of the week. That's normal, you know? And that's the thing that I think, and like you're saying, you have a lot of like motivation. You had a lot of people telling you, that you were going to go to school, you wanted to go to school. And I don't think for me it was ever put in my head to that, like, there's opportunities, there's things outside of Point Arena. And I think that's a big thing for a lot of people. Because I know a lot of people that don't really leave Mendocino County and haven't. And I
Hmm.
think that's like, that's definitely, you're not going to learn, they're not going to learn, they're not going to, like you're saying, your eyes weren't open until you left Point Arena and you're like, oh wait, that's happening in my town. Which
Yeah.
is like crazy to me that no, they won't ever be able to like really reach out and learn like you have or like other people have.
Yeah, and I think like I think there's definitely like a lot of beautiful things about Point Arena and in the community that like I miss and I crave. And when I left, like there was a lot of things that I look back and I'm like, wow, that was not okay. And there's other things that I wish the world was more like, specifically like the community environment, the trust. Like there's a deep level of trust that people have in each other that doesn't exist in the world. I think that's like another part of culture shock that I had is like when I left, I was a very trusting person, and it's gotten me into some like not great situations on multiple places. And there's definitely been places and moments where like I was in a very dangerous situation, and I had no idea it was
Yeah.
a dangerous situation because I grew up so safe
Uh-huh.
that it didn't even click in my head like the level of danger that I was in. Or like other times where, like my relationship with the police was very different, and I had to learn like, oh, I'm not safe here. And also like how easy it was for me to end up incarcerated, how easy it is for me to end up in like these pretty scary, serious situations, for doing things that I did that I thought were totally okay. And now I'm like, oh, that is not okay, and it's actually really dangerous. But going back to your point about like leaving, when I think back to it, like I was like the token student, right? I was like the token child. I mean, I think I had a lot of teachers, I had a lot of people at Point Arena who were rooting for me, who supported me. If I wanted something, I would get it. If I needed an AP course, I would get it. If I wanted support with like a college essay, I would get it. And if I didn't get it, I would find a way to get it, And I did that because I had people who were telling me like, you were meant to do this. That's not the same story for a lot of my classmates. It's not the same story for my sibling, to where, they weren't getting that same sort of support and attention. And it's that thing where like, I think that it's a place that is really hard to get out of. And it's a place where, I don't think there's enough like examples or support or conversations about how to leave and how to be in the city or how to live in a different area. And it's not like we have a university, right, that we can just like feed into.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people do go to like Mendocino Community College or they go to Santa Rosa JC, but it's not the same.
It's too
It's really
close.
easy, it's too close. And the thing is, like, it for me, that's an extension, right? It's like an extension of Point Arena. It's an extension of the area, and it's really because you grow up in such a safe and like just close community via the nature of the size of it. Not even just because, like, like a lot of my friendships, I know to this day, and I've told quite a few folks, but like a lot of my friendships from high school, a lot of like my best friends, I'm like, if I had met you in the city, if we had grown up in a different environment, like we probably wouldn't be friends.
I
We
think that's
probably
very,
never would have talked.
yeah.
Yeah.
I always think that's a very good point because like I like that's a really good point. Like I don't think like I would be the person I am if I grew up somewhere else. And I
Yeah,
really, really
100%.
like who I am. And I really love where I grew up. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, I think that's very true. A lot of us wouldn't have been in the same circles. A lot of us would have been off doing other things. And but remembering back on high school, you were always like a go-getter. You were always like voicing your opinion. You're always you. And I really admire that. That's why I wanted to have you on because like you're an example that I think should be shown and should like be just like, you're an example that people should follow. Because like you said, you've been to Santa Barbara, you've been to DC, now you're in Oakland, you've been doing all these projects that people should see and should hear about. Because that's a story I think definitely should be told and should be like taught to younger kids to motivate, especially in our cultures, in our communities, because not a lot of people do that. And and I just know, looking back, I had nobody that was doing these type of things to motivate me. So I would want to do that for younger kids that are still there on the res, or still in Gualala, or still in Manchester, or on any res or any like broken down community. You know what I mean?
And it's like it's really hard, and it's really scary to leave, And I think it's like it's hard to, because you're gonna fail. And I think like we're not told that it's okay to fail enough, And I think it's also like it's comfortable, and when I left, it was like I had to learn how to meet people. Like you have to learn how to make friends. It's not a thing that because you grew up in a place where, like I said, like all of your friends are your friends because you go to school with them, because you live with them, because they're around you. And so it is hard to leave. But the way that I've seen it is like, like Point Arena is always going to be there, and you can always come back to it. And I think one of the reasons that I've been able to take risks, or I've been able to do more, I've done a lot of the things that I've done, is because I've always known that was like my plan B. Like I could always go back.
Yeah.
I know if I go back, like there's going to be somebody there to catch me. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a way for me to make, like I'm always going to be able to find a job, or like find, like I feel like Point Arena has that, where like I know even if I really fuck up and like shit gets really bad, like I'll always have a place to go back. I don't know if I was not supposed to cuss on here. I don't know how many times I've cussed. Have I cussed a lot?
No,
I just want to.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Realized that I was swearing.
It's all free. Speak freely as you like. I'm not tripping. And I do post this to YouTube and stuff, so people will see it. But I'm like, I don't care, because I let that slip all the time. I'm like, it's not.
Okay. Yeah, okay. But I mean, it's a really hard place to leave.
Yeah, it is, and it's like you said, it's easy to go back, and it's there forever, and there are always people there that will catch you. And like you said, we've gone to school and known these people forever, so these people are like family. So when we go back there, it's always with open arms. So that kind of goes into my next question. What are some things about your culture that you wish to either learn or spread to others, or just educate others on, such as immigration, incarceration? Because you do things with incarcerated people as well, right? On any of those topics, if you want to just speak on any of those.
Cool. Yeah. So my parents, as I said, have been in the area for about 30 years now. And they moved there from Ukiah, so they didn't go directly there, but my family migrated to Ukiah from Mexico. And so my dad is from Michoacan. He's actually there right now with my grandmother, spending a week. It's his first time back in over 10 years. It's his birthday today too, so it's his first birthday there, I think, since he left. And so it's exciting. I'm happy for him. And my mom, my mom is from Jalisco, which is a bordering state to Michoacan. And so, so they both migrated here years ago, and they actually met in the U.S. So they met in Ukiah and then got together here in the U.S. and then moved to the coast shortly after they got married, and stayed there. And I think a lot of times when people talk about migrants, when they talk about immigration, they like to focus on the trauma. They like to focus on the victimization and the lack of agency. And so I think that, I have been working on a master's degree, and my master's degree is actually researching the settlement of migrants, specifically Mexican migrants, in the Mendonoma area. And I did a series of different interviews with migrants that were the first in their families to arrive in the area. Because for me, it was like, I was always really curious, like, how'd you end up here? Like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
literally in the middle of nowhere. Like, you gotta go out of your way to end up here. Like, you don't just accidentally end up here. I don't know, you
yeah.
know, like, it's way out the way.
I was just thinking that on my way home from work, actually, like, how do people end up there?
Exactly. And so that, that was like a thing that I was always like, how do you end up here? Like, it's not, it's not a place that I think like accidentally like stumble upon. And so that's kind of what my research started as. And I think in it, like my my focus was on homemaking and placemaking. And I think that migrants and just like all people of color, right, and black folks and indigenous people, like we're more than just our trauma, right?
Hmm.
And there's so much more, there's so many complexities, and there's also joy, and there's love, and there's these other things that get built. And so that's what my research was kind of focused on, was like the settlement process and the homemaking and the why. And when people spoke about it, when I did the interviews, they were semi-structured but really open. I wasn't trying to give any type of leading questions. I was just trying to ask and see, how people felt. And overall, I think people, felt joy and felt love. And so one of the main things that came out, there's a term called topophilia.
Uh-huh.
Um, and what it means is love of place. And so it's like when you feel a feeling of love towards a geographic area, right? And so it could be like love of a specific like natural area or things like that, but it's meant as love of place. And a lot of people that ended up settling in Mendonoma, they stayed not because of like the job or the money necessarily, but for the area. And they were there because they had a home. They were able to have a home. They were able to have clean water. They were able to have fresh air. They were able to have the freedom and safety for their children, where they could just go outside and play and not have to worry about those things, and the community feel too. And so I think, what I would want to share and like share about like migrants and different folks is that like, our stories aren't just our traumas, and there's a lot more to it. And there's a process of like placemaking that happens when we come, and in a changing in an environment, and a beauty that is infused into the places that we go. Um, and and yeah, so I'm gonna put my thoughts together. I would as more statements, I think. I'll pause there.
Yeah, that's. Do you think Mendonoma is a little bit safer for undocumented folks to like live a stress-free life for like being deported or anything like that?
I think it's definitely a safer environment than a lot of cities, for sure. I think it's one of the reasons that people choose it as a destination. And actually, when I was doing my research, nobody spoke about their immigration status. But I just know from like growing up there and my personal experience that it definitely is. It is a safer area, and a lot of that comes with like the community and with trust, right? Like people know. I remember growing up, like, a lot of people that don't have papers or who are undocumented who live there. The police at the time, the sheriffs knew. The sheriffs knew who was driving without a license. They knew who was living in there. But it's a place where it's like, it was a community, and there was trust, and there's safety and trust, and there was protection in that too. And it was, I think like the fact that we don't have an active police force, the fact that we don't have a police station there, like it actually made the community a lot safer for undocumented folks, for people of color in general, and different
Yeah.
things. And so, I think, that definitely is true, is that it's a much safer environment than like living in a city. And I think there's more opportunities than exist in other places. Because of the nature of like the area and the size. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's some really good points. And I also wanted to ask you about like incarceration, like the work that you're doing with your nonprofit group and stuff. Because you work for a nonprofit with incarcerated folks, right? Because I remember we were talking about
Yeah.
writing people. Yeah.
Yeah, so I work with a nonprofit called the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights in Oakland, California. And so we were actually founded as one of the first police watch systems in the nation. 25 years ago, 1996, the Ella Baker Center started after a Black man was murdered by a police officer in San Francisco. And Aaron Williams was his name. And so they started as a police watch. So it was a Bay Area police watch. And then that has evolved into today the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights. And so we work on policy. So we work on a policy level to pass bills that decriminalize and also work towards decarceration. Some of the work that we've done is around eliminating sentence enhancements. So there's a variety of different sentence enhancements around the state that are used to essentially fuel mass incarceration and like lead to obnoxious sentences. So for example, one of the first sentence enhancements we removed was the nickel prior. And so gosh, I can't remember the specifics, but essentially I think it was like for certain crimes that had been committed and convicted, they would add an additional 5 years. And so you would so if you got convicted again, so let's say you stole something, a petty theft, and you get a year off of that sentence, but you had committed one of those other crimes in your record that qualified for the nickel prior, you would get an automatic 5-year sentence enhancement added to your sentence.
So in
Yeah,
so in total, you're doing 6 years.
6 years. So the second crime really you only got 1 year for, but you're doing 6 years automatically because of the nickel prior.
What? This is ridiculous.
So that was one of the first sentence enhancements we passed, the RISE Act, and what that did is that it eliminated that sentence enhancement. The second, the other sentence enhancement that we removed was a 1-year sentence enhancement, which was it was the most often used sentence enhancement, and that sentence enhancement was based off of time served. So if you were arrested at any time, and you had served time, so that means like if you got arrested and you were actually booked, then you got an automatic year added to your sentence for any prior booking, right? So you didn't have to actually be sentenced, you just had to be booked. And what that means is like people that can't afford bail, those are the people that are getting booked. The people that could afford to pay the fees or to do whatever, they weren't getting booked. And so this wasn't being applied to them. And so people were having years added to their sentences because of this 1-year sentence enhancement. And so we were actually able to remove that sentence enhancement as well, moving forward to where it's not. Before it was like there was no discretion, so it was like you automatically have those sentence enhancements added, right? And so people are doing like dozens of years just off of enhancements. So you could like serve your term and still be locked up. There's people that I know who were still locked up serving 20 years after their base term just from sentence enhancements. And the sentence enhancements, they're racist, they're classist. They're all of the isms. And so, what we've done is we've been working slowly to chip away at those sentence enhancements and get them removed. And now we're working on trying to make that retroactive so that people who are serving those sentence enhancements can be dropped. But that's not, it's not automatically retroactive. There is a process that we are able to fight for so people can appeal their sentences and try to get it done retroactively applied so that they can, so you can appeal it. But that's just like, it's another, lengthy legal process. So that's just like an example of some of the work that we do. On the statewide level, we do policy work to like decarcerate. On the local level, we do a lot of the defund the police work locally. So we work with different coalitions to try to move money away from the sheriff's office on the county level and from the city's office, like the Oakland PD office on a local level, and reinvest that money towards like community service, mental health responders, education, healthcare, just like all of the things that we know actually are violence prevention. Because the reality is like, police don't they don't prevent crime. They respond after the harm is done,
Yeah.
and they just inflict more harm. There's no healing or thing that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, applying this money to more resources, just like it improves your communities, it improves people's desire to want to do other things other than what they're doing now. And that's right now, that's usually fearing the police or finding ways to get the money, their dinner, their rent, because like people in California having to work two jobs just to survive,
Right.
and in these communities that are underserved, those are the communities that the police are patrolling the most, and those are the people that they're arresting the most. So I think that's huge for defunding the police. And I'm sorry for Haim, for you getting arrested in your own home. I see you commenting on that. That's really unfortunate. And actually, I was talking to a family member up north about the police like responding 2 hours later after they had called on the reservation. And I think that's a big thing too, is like, I know we commented on like it being a good thing that like the police aren't there, but on situations like that, it kind of, because the person was having a mental health crisis and the police never showed up. And then the police never showed up, and she was needing to be taken away for the day or the night or whatever, and they never showed up. And I think it's weird because they patrol our communities the most, but they also don't really do anything in these communities when they're there.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, defund the police. I'm 1,000% for it. And relocating money into like other places. Like,
Right. Because I think like even in the situation that you explained, like again, like police aren't violence prevention, right? They don't actually solve anything.
yeah,
They're just there to criminalize, lock up, throw away the key. And so I think like you're saying, like there should be another number that you can call. There should be somebody that you can call to receive that support. And I know like, growing up there, whenever something did happen, whenever something negative did happen, like we weren't calling the police. Usually you're calling somebody that can help. You're calling someone that can respond. You're calling someone that can actually offer resources or support. There were a few incidents where I can remember, I called Vanessa Ignacio, who was like, did the sex ed class
yeah,
and like worked with the teen peer clinic because I had her number and I was like, hey, maybe she knows a resource or can help me with this, or calling Natalie Berg.
mm-hmm.
Or, like there were different adults and people in town or in area that I was like, okay, let me call them. I remember, like our fire department is largely volunteer. I know
Yeah,
many people that work in the fire department. I do too. And so like when something happened, like I called them.
uh-huh,
My uncle, when I was growing up, was a paramedic. Him and my aunt were paramedics, and they had an ambulance. And so, like, if something happened, like, I would call my aunt right away and be like, "Hey, I need, medical assistance or this or that." Like I don't think the police are the first line of defense in our town. And like you said, largely they rarely respond. And when they do, I can't think of a time when there's been like a good solution or something that happened that like improved the situation, because they were there. And so, people do need response. People do need support. And they should, like that's where we should be investing.
yeah.
Um,
And like you touch on mental health, and I think mental health is like never, ever, ever talked about in that area. It's like a foreign language in Point Arena, in Mendocino, and that's very unfortunate because I know like I could have prevented so many things if I knew more about mental health and if I went about it in a better way, yeah, because I know mental health was a big issue that I'm still working on, and I think others should like open up more about it because I think the toxic masculinity has people there not willing to open up about mental health. And it's looked upon as if you have a mental health problem, you're mentally weak.
yeah.
So I think it's important for us to like tell people it's okay to tell people you're feeling upset, tell people you're feeling mad or you're feeling angry. Um, and I just wanted to see your thoughts on mental health issues, you know.
Yeah, like we definitely need resources on the coast. Like there and also like not like having a therapist, having a psychiatrist, like that's not enough. You need a culturally competent therapist and psychiatrist, right? Like talking to an old white dude, which was like my first experience with like therapy, was not, it was in a safe space. It wasn't a place where I felt supported. It wasn't a person that understood me in any way. It wasn't until I started seeing women of color therapists in the city that I was like, oh wow, this is actually really useful and helpful. And I think like there's a lot of different things. Like one is like destigmatizing it. Two is like making it accessible, and making it culturally competent. You know, having people that can connect in some way, that offer that safe space. I think for me, it's like, you know, I can't waste my energy in therapy like explaining to you like racism or bias or, you know, all of these different things. Like to an extent, like I just kind of need you to get it
Yeah,
so that we can like work on the issues, and I don't have to like
yeah,
teach you about like why this is a thing or like why what systemic trauma is and things like that. So I think it's like it's important to have, and it's also important to have like, you know, someone that people feel safe talking to, because it is different. I think it's a different thing if like your therapist looks like you or has a
mhm,
similar background. You're going to react in a very different way than if it's like a foreign person to you.
absolutely.
um and on the coast, like, you know, there is not a single person of color mental health provider. There are no bilingual therapists, there's no bilingual clinicians. I mean, most of our doctors aren't even bilingual. You know,
Yeah,
there's staff at RCMS that are, but you know, like there's a lack of access, there's a lack of different folks, and you know, there's definitely like a lack of care that's given to to different sects of the area. Like I definitely think that the care that is given there is catered to older retired white people, that do make up a large part of the portion, but also, you know, like a large chunk is Native American. There should be resources specific to that community. There should be more information for that community. You know, like there's different health issues that people deal with based off of race, based off of history, based off of all of these things. And so, you know, we need to do a better job at like serving the folks in our community.
yeah, and someone just said no insurance, and that's I think our whole health in like whole healthcare system just needs to be like a lot of things in our system just needs to be ripped out because it's also a systemic racism thing in the healthcare system
Yeah.
because like you said there's certain issues that certain races deal with that others don't, you know. There's certain things that yeah, exactly, like I don't know, like you know, salt kills more people of color than you know, other people, you know. It's just a lot of things that like the systemic racism just pushes us to the side again. And that's just another thing that just needs to be kind of just not kind of just completely changed, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's kind of all the questions I had. Unless you had any other topics that you wanted to talk about, unless anybody had any questions in here for us, anybody still in there. But yeah, that's all pretty much everything I had for you.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about everything for days. But no, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great to see you. I just want to say I'm like super proud of you and excited of everything that you're doing and
Thank
everything
you.
that I see from afar. It's been a long time since we hung out on the res many, many, many years ago. Very different place in our lives. And so I'm just really happy to see where you're at and all that you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And here's sometime soon. I want to plan an event in Point Arena or Mendocino because I've done a lot of things outside of this, you know, that city, and I just feel it in my heart that I have to go back and do an event there. You know, whether it's feeding people, whether it's clothing people, whether it's doing something. But yeah, if you're ever wanting to join in on that, I'd be
Yeah,
love.
I'm super down. I've actually I do stay pretty connected. I've done a few different things. I try to like talk to students. When Roger was there, I used to like go to his class every year and just like talk to students about like school and like leaving Point Arena. I think it's like you said, like there's not enough people, I think, telling folks to leave, but also giving support when they leave because it's it's not easy and there's like the world is big and it's scary and we're not taught how to deal with it. So I think like there needs to be more people offering um that experience and also like opportunities and like sharing more than just like get out of town, but like, hey, here's how you might be able to do it and
Yeah,
you're not alone if you do it. And so, I definitely try to go back and like talk to high school students particularly, or talk to different students in the area. But yeah, if you ever want to have an event out there, do something like I'm in.
definitely down. And we just need more examples to be going back and showing like, yo, I did it. You can do it too. It's easy. It's scary, but it's definitely worth leaving Point Arena.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot more to see in the world. And well, my thing to them is always like you can come back.
Yeah,
Like the res will be there. You can always go back.
that
Like
place
go
will
back.
always be there.
But get back. Get out first. You
Yeah,
know.
definitely. Experience the world, experience some things. Okay, thank you so much for having or coming on. I really appreciate it, and I'll be sending you this video either through Instagram or YouTube or whatever.
Sounds great. It was great talking to you.
See you, Norma. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for everyone that joined. So I did tell everyone that this was going to be for Indigenous folks, but if anybody that is a person of color who wants to join me on one of these discussions, I'd be super down to have you tap in with me in my DMs, and we can plan something out. Peace, love, and happiness.